One of the things that for myself in running and in business that I need to work on first, I know I have all these little problems in business. I know I need to look at becoming more efficient in some of my operations. I know I need to become more profitable in some of the areas. I, as a client or as a coach, I know these are a lot of the hot topics. And a lot of times people get distracted by the tool, the shiny new thing that if I could just have these magic beans, my business would be better. And so they go buy those magic beans, and guess what? It's the same as it was.
I don't think the purpose of my business is to provide a lifestyle for me. I think the purpose of my business is to act as a vehicle for my own personal transformational journey. And if I'm not making significant progress on my own personal transformational journey, I am not happy. I am not fulfilled. Doesn't matter how much money I have. I marvel at these guys that are making 10 times more money than I am, that are absolutely on fire and driven every single day. Because money at the end of the day and lifestyle, once we attain it, we realize it's pretty hollow. Unless we're doing something that connects with our purpose, adding value, leveraging our gifts and talents in the service of others. And that's what vehicle business does for me. And I can't make progress along that journey without the right coach to help me with my mindset. Mindset is everything to me. Tools are the easy part. Mindset is everything.
Welcome to the Property Management Success Podcast, where we interview leaders in the industry to uncover the secrets to profitability, efficiency, and achieving true freedom, whether it's your time, money, or lifestyle. I'm your host, Tony Klein, and I'm here to help you build a wildly successful property management business. Let's get to it.
Tony Klein.
Yeah.
What's our intro? We need we established our intro routine. Music coming in.
Yeah, I think we're finally here.
We're finally here.
We're finally here.
No. We've been here. We've been waiting at this aid station, and you just got here.
Yeah, you're finally here.
You're finally here.
All right, Mark. Let's get into it this week. So let's talk a little bit about some of the highlights. But before we get into that, I want to find out how's your training going?
Training? What kind of training? My leadership training or my running training?
Yeah, your running training. I've been tracking you on Strava. I don't know if I've been seeing the activities that I'm supposed to see.
Yeah, thank you. I need the accountability, so I really appreciate this. Last week I ran 3 or 4 times, 4.5 miles each. Not proud of that. I've been crawling back. So this week the goal is 4 or 5 runs, and so let's see if we can crack 20 miles this week. That's the first step to getting back to it. I averaged 40 miles a week for 6 years, 12,000 miles, and then I just accomplished all the goals I had, and I thought, man, this is hard work. I don't know if I want to do this.
Yeah.
But now, without it, there's a contrast in things. There's an opposition in all things. Now, I miss the second order consequences of running, the fantastic vitality, the confidence, the good mental health. I need all that back, so I'm coming back.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. This wasn't a topic that we had for today, but it's a topic we've had on our list, which was having a race to look forward to, having something, not just what you're working on now, but the next thing out there. And it reminds me of that topic when you talked about you accomplished all your goals, so, backed off on the training. And I think that can be dangerous. So let's actually pivot a little bit into talking about training. I know that was one of the things that we were kind of covering earlier, and just talking about as business owners or as runners. We all know about the importance of training. We all know about putting the time into improving our craft and getting a little bit better. And even though we know it, we don't always do it. And there's a few reasons we don't. Number one, training is uncomfortable. It gets boring. And, the idea of practicing something routine just doesn't get the juices going most of the time.
It's too routine.
Yeah. And I know as entrepreneurs, we like to get excited about the new shiny thing that just came across our plate. And I don't know if you're like this, Mark, but for me, I am really good at getting things 80% of the way finished. And then I need somebody to come in and I need a closer. I need somebody to close out those details, because by the time I get 80% into it, I'm already thinking of the next thing to work on.
Absolutely. I'm like 60%.
Yeah. Well, everybody uses 80/20, so I was just trying to stick in there. Yeah. Yeah, I'm probably more like you.
I can take it like 60% there and get really enthusiastic and excited about it. And then I need someone to take it to like 85%. And then I need no one to take it to 100% because of the law of diminishing returns, right? We can just put infinite resources into something as we try to approach 100%. That should never be the goal.
Yeah. That's actually a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. Like, um, I talk about this when I'm talking about running with some of the people that I kind of coach up on the running side, just more of a hobby. But we talk about the better we get, the harder improvement is, because now instead of measuring in minutes, we wind up measuring in seconds. And the Olympics were just held, and those people aren't measuring in minutes or seconds; they're measuring in fractions of seconds to get that improvement.
Yeah, I did the 100 meter race. Wasn't it won by like 4 thousandths of a second, the men's race this year?
Yeah, it's crazy about that. So let's talk about, how do we make training easier? How do we make it so that it becomes routine? Because when you and I are in training, whether it's for running or for business, when we're doing the routine things that we're supposed to do, we all know that it is a lot smoother and delivers a lot better results. So how do
Yeah.
we go about doing that?
Yeah, one of my thoughts on this comes from Ray Dalio, my favorite author right now. Reading this book, Principles. The thing is this book has the most dense, value packed book I've ever read. Business books, Principles by Ray Dalio. He talks about first order, second order, and third order consequences. What's the first order consequence of training on a training run, especially just a boring weekly training run? It's time and fatigue, and in Arizona, a lot of sweating, and not a lot of things that I'm like racing out the door to go do. But what are the second order consequences? And here's where the magic happens at the second order and the third order consequences, right? And if we can gear ourselves to pursue second and third order consequences, the first order consequences seem more compelling. That's one idea that in reflection to your question.
Okay, so what are those? What are the second and third order? Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, second order consequences of running. I'm more fit. I crave cleaner foods, actually. I just did a little video posted on my little personal channel about how when I eat garbage and I'm running, my body just pushes it through and it's unpleasant. And then I crave, not because I crave it in the moment, because my brain remembers the second order consequence of eating trash. So then I start shifting my behavior. The second order consequence of running is the vitality. It's building endurance. There's something really incredible about stringing together. You go from 5 miles a week to 10 miles a week, 20 miles a week, and eventually if you can get up to 40, 50 miles a week, you're a completely different human being. And the first order consequences of getting there are never like super enjoyable, super pleasant. But I mean, what a life transformation. The second order consequence of feeling that strength, that confidence, that vitality, going out for a 15-mile run, let's say, and being able to like do intervals in the middle of it and crank down to a fast pace and then back off for a couple minutes and do that 3 or 4 times. Then you can achieve the runner's high. You can't get the runner's high. That's a second and third order. That's a third order consequence, right? First order consequence, going out running and it kind of sucks. Second order consequence, you get the endurance. Third order consequence, once you have the endurance and you can perform at a high level, now you can have the runner's high. Now you can achieve something great in a race.
Yeah, and I can see how that fits into the way that I train as well. If I get up first thing in the morning and go out and run before it's too hot, and I know that doesn't even exist in Arizona. It's always hot, but in Colorado, you can get up and get out before it's too hot. The sun's coming up over the peaks. You can smell the dew on the wild grasses. You can see the herds of deer or elk. It's just beautiful. And if I start my day like that, well, now I've already started in a good routine. I have good habits working in my favor. And so, well, of course, I'm going to eat clean. Of course, I'm going to focus on the things I need to focus on. But if I do the opposite, if I get up and I eat something really crappy to start my day, well, then it's like I'm already started in those bad habits. And so you continue to go that way. So I could see how starting your day, having the right habits to get started, starting with doing the things that you need to do as part of training really dives into that second and third order of consequences and changes the whole outcome of your day. And if you do that enough days in a row, changes the outcome of your life.
So we need to tie this into property management, leading a property management company, and what training looks like there. But before we go there, I just want to mention one other thing. One of my favorite authors, one of my business heroes, is the late Stephen Covey. And one of the things that I just always remember that he said is, the private victory precedes the public victory. I see in my boys. I have a 19 and 21-year-old boy, young man in my life. I'm a father of two young men, and they want the public victory now. They want to make fat stacks of cash. They want to be popular on social media, and we all did, at one point. But the private victory precedes the public victory. Tony, you and I have been on so many training runs, and I don't know if you've thought this, but I've thought this. I just put one little brick in the wall on that training run, and sometimes I'll be doing a hard workout in the heat at night in my neighborhood, nobody around, nobody watching, and I'll just really push, and then I'll get done with it. I'll just think, that's it. That was part of my private victory that no one's ever going to see. This is when the race is won, right here, right now, doing this.
Yeah, I take that back to when I was a real estate broker before I really got into figuring out that property management was a better gig for me because you could do property management and then that led to doing brokerage sales versus going out and trying to find new sales and being broke every month until you got somebody under contract. I used to say to my team and to my clients that all the work is done leading up to closing day. And closing days is like the celebration lap. Yes, of course, you need to make sure that you're paying attention to the names on the deed, and all of that is accurate. But you've done everything you need to do to celebrate, and I kind of feel like that's the same in running. Like race day is really, you're not going to do too much that's going to make you physically improve on race day. Now you can do a lot of things that'll screw that up, but all those little bricks that you stacked during the training season is what makes race day the victory lap or the celebration of all of the effort that you've put in.
You can't just show up on race day and think, that winning is doing something impossible for your current level of ability.
No.
It really, the race is won in the training. So, what is business owner training, and how does it relate with running training? We are your aid station. You're on the ultra marathon of building a property management business. Tony and I are at the aid station, which means you just got here. You just finished a 5 to 10 mile segment, and now you're here for some nourishment. And we need to give you some bananas and some hydration. And so that's what we want to do today.
Yep. Okay, so let's talk about what that looks like. So one of the things that when you're putting together a training plan is that consistent routine. And I've seen a lot of business owners, they'll come up with their annual review. They'll do their annual goals, their annual forecasting. Some of them decide, okay, well, I don't have any money left and I still need to pay taxes. So I guess I need to look at my finances for my one time this year. And like, there's a lot of business owners that don't do the day-to-day things, or not even day-to-day, but just routine things that you need to do on a frequent basis to have a successful business. So what would you say are a couple of those? I named off really knowing what your finances are and knowing your cash flow and knowing where your revenue's coming from, your income streams, and reviewing those. But what are some of the other areas that you see that business owners need to train on?
Well, you and I know that when we run ultra marathons, we wear a Garmin watch. And that Garmin watch gives us important feedback throughout that full day, sometimes in your case, 2 or 3 days worth of running. And so the metrics, Peter Drucker is famous for saying that what gets measured gets managed. And so, do we have the visibility on the right things in the business? Weight Watchers has been around for decades, in no small part because you have to show up and stand on a scale in front of another person. Okay, so one of the most important things about training in running and growing a property management business is measuring the right things. And this one tripped me up for years. And you're talking about financial measurement. That's one of the measurements. This tripped me up for years. I thought, man, I just don't have the time to put together the software, the programs, the automations. If I can't automate data collection, I just can't do data collection and I can't measure things. And that's not the case. So I would say foundationally and primarily, when we are training ourselves to be a better business leader, we have to set the right measurements in place, even if it means spending the time manually gathering the data in the beginning.
I would even argue that oftentimes manually gathering the data will lead to better results, because when it's automated, you can tend to just look at it and glance over it. But when you have to manually enter information into a spreadsheet or tracking, whatever you're using to track it, you pay a little bit more attention to it. And I don't know.
I love this, Tony. I've never heard anybody say that. I love that paradigm shift because it justifies the position that I'm in where I don't have all the automations I want. But also, wow, what a beautiful thing. Like when your team members have to go gather the data, you could look at that from two frames. One is like, wow, what a waste of time. They could be doing productive activities. The other thing is like, no, they're the ones standing on the scale right now, and they're using their time to do that, and maybe that moves them because of the action itself.
Yeah. So when I'm doing my one-on-one coaching with clients in the property management space, we have a KPI spreadsheet, or we call it a scoreboard, and we keep all of the important metrics, all of those things that we're going to train on or keep track of on a weekly basis, monthly basis, quarterly basis. There's different sheets in there for that. But we actually have the ability, everybody goes in and self-reports their numbers. So everybody on the team reports. And the way that we set it up is, it's not a tool that the business owner uses to report back information to the team. It's a tool that the team puts together so that they can report that back to the business owner. And it's the whole trust but verify. But we intentionally don't automate some of the things that we could, because I want people to stand up, like you said, on the scale and take accountability for putting their numbers in the sheet. And then on the weekly meeting, and we call it a level 10, but in the level 10 meeting, they have to then self-report their numbers and call it out. And the way that our tool works is, if they've met their metric or their KPI, the key performance indicator, if they've met that, the cell turns green. And if they didn't meet it, the cell turns red. And so it's very easy to go down the list and see who's met their metrics and who hasn't. And it's a little bit like calling somebody out for, dropping a pass in practice or something like that. But I think rather than them just coming to the meeting and saying, oh yeah, look at that, I didn't hit my numbers because it was automated, they're having to, with intention, discover what their numbers are. And even if they're being automated somewhere else, we have them manually put it into this tool, so that way they've done that ahead of time, so that they can then explain what they're going to do differently between this week and next week to make sure that we hit their numbers and their metrics.
Okay, I want to drill down on something you said, if I can. You just beautifully described how you as a business coach help people set up their KPIs, key performance indicators, and you start a routine. Training is all about routines. You start a routine of looking at that on a regular basis. Now, the thing I want to focus on, or I just want to highlight about what you just shared, is look, if we go up one level and we look down on what you just said, I think one of the most important things you just said is a coach. You and I know that there's a tremendous power in working with coaches. Can you talk about that a little bit? And maybe it's a little bit patting yourself on the back. You're a business coach, I get it, but tell me about coaching in running, and then maybe hit it back to me, and I'll talk about my experience in coaching in business.
Sure. So this is actually something I love to talk about because obviously, yes, full disclosure, I am a business coach in the property management space. But the reason that I love talking about this is the first year I went out and ran the Moab 240. It's 240 miles through the deserts of Moab, Utah. It's a full 240-mile loop, and you start in the desert, you go up into the Abajo Mountains, then you come back down into the desert, then you go into another mountain range up in the La Salle Mountain, and then you come back down into the desert. And the first year I did that, it took me 99 hours and 42 minutes and some odd seconds to get that done. The guy that won that race, he actually set the course record, and he finished it in 55 hours. Just incredible. So think about that. He had almost 48 hours, almost 2 full days from the time he crossed the finish line until the time I crossed the finish line. Now I was like in the start of the back third. So I was just a little bit behind half, and I had made some silly errors in the race, and I had a little bit of an injury. But to think about the fact that somebody was out there doing the same exact thing I was and did it in almost half the time. And so myself and one of my pacers, we said, we need to get to know that guy and find out what his secrets are, because obviously we're doing the same thing. He's just doing a lot better. Now, to be clear, he's a little bit younger than I am, so I can't automatically pick that up. But one of the things that we did was after that race, we hired him as our coach, and I went back the next year, I cut over 20 hours off my time, or just nearly 20 hours off my time, finished the race in 80 hours, finished in the top 10. And so I went from being in like the last or the back third to finishing in the top 10. And honestly, the reason I was able to do that was because of the things that he told me in training and some of the routines that he told me to do. And I was out there working way too hard and this is a little bit too geeky on the running side, but I was running at a rate where my heart rate was way too high. And so he's just like, back that down, and we're going to do some other things. But, the importance of hiring that coach, if I wouldn't have hired him, I never would have learned that. And I wouldn't have been performing at the level that I'm performing at now. I wouldn't have gone on and done the Triple Crown of 200s and all of that. So that was my experience. And I've had multiple experiences like that since in the running world. But
So,
how does that relate now
oh,
to
that's
business?
amazing. That is amazing, and it's so true. I was once at a presentation through Entrepreneur Organization, which I was part of their accelerator group for 6 years to try to help surround myself with smarter people and try to level up my business, and it did help. And one of the presentations I went to on one of our learning days, a guy stood up at the front of the classroom or in front of the gathering, and he put a number up on the board. And it was like $22,385.17. He's like, "Hey, what do you think this is?" And people are like, "That's how much you spent on marketing," or that was your profit last month, or whatever. Because this guy had a pretty cool business. He was more successful than we were. He was telling us about his success, right? And he said, and this was like probably 10 years ago now. He said, "That's how much money I spent on coaching for myself last year." And that kind of blew my mind, because at that time, at the size of my business, I would not have dreamed of spending more on coaching than I was on my house payment. But that's exactly what this guy did. And it was no mistake that he was on this trajectory and I was on this trajectory. And I have a similar story to you. In running, I was getting back into running. I turned 40. I had this midlife crisis. Like, what am I going to do? I'm getting older. Am I ever going to achieve my physical potential at anything? And I decided to start running. I went from couch to marathon in 10 months and did like a 3:19 marathon, which wasn't bad. But at that time, right before I ran that marathon, I watched a half marathon, and there was a woman running with the men at the front of the, like, unbelievably fast. Like, she placed third overall in this local half marathon. I'm like, who is that woman? Like, I've got to find out who she is. I later found out that she and her husband were both runners, and her husband was a coach. And I got to have that coach, and I hired him as a coach, and that took me 12 months later from a 3:19 marathon to a 3:02 marathon. Absolutely transformative experience to me. I dropped almost a second per minute per mile pace per week that I worked with him. So my per minute mile pace dropped by almost 50 seconds from one year to the next. I mean, it was a big deal for me. And so, anyway, I don't think you and I cannot overemphasize the importance of investing in coaches, because without a coach, you can self-train. And that's what most of us do in business, is we self-train, right? But if you can get a coach, then you significantly change the trajectory of the future of your business training. So that's like foundational for me.
Okay, so at the risk of, and I didn't know we were going to go this deep into
I think it's just
coaching.
one of the most important things. Yeah, honestly.
Yeah. So I don't want it to come off like I'm trying to
Self-promotion.
pitch
Yeah.
a
This is
commercial.
not a commercial for Tony. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you were to hire a business coach, because you've done this in the past, I think you still have. You have
right now. I have 2 business coaches right now.
Okay, so let's talk about if someone was at that point that you were at when you heard this guy talk about having the numbers up on the board, and you heard somebody say that they invested $22,000, and whether it was said in jest or not, that spending that much money on a coach, that was more than a house payment. What would you say to somebody who's in that same position? Where would you start? Where would you want to get coaching to help your business? Where would you get the best bang for the buck?
That's a really good question. I was introduced to my business coach now I've worked with for close to 9 years. And the reason I decided to work with him is because he went out and we met for lunch for free, just to have a conversation. Within that 45-minute lunch, he helped me with 2 significant mindset breakthroughs that were just like aha moments for me. And I realized, wow, if he can do this for free in 45 minutes, what would an engagement with him look like? But I was absolutely torn with the cost of it. A good coach, in my experience, is going to be between $250 to $500 an hour. $250 to $500 an hour. That's the going rate. Okay.
Yeah.
My coach was like $350 an hour. He still is. And I've added like support for, he coaches some of my leaders in my company now, and he handles our monthly meetings, and he helps with annual planning. So I pay him more than that now. But I would say try to think in terms of opportunity costs. I think we've covered this on previous podcasts. I'm a huge proponent of thinking in terms of opportunity cost, not financial cost. We can't afford not to have the help. We can't afford to leave the tens of thousands of dollars on the table that are coming at the cost of us being too cheap to hire the right people to get us to the next level. Business coaching, like when I first started with my business coach, I worked with him for a few months, and then I constantly had this nagging thought, like, is this really worth it? I could have figured this out on my own. I could just read the books. Like, is this guy really helping transform my thinking or not? And I undervalued it because I was too focused on the financial cost. So I don't know if you're trying to ask me like how you find the right business coach, or I think the mindset blocker for most people is they're just too cheap because they're thinking in terms of money leaving their wallet. They're not thinking of the limitless opportunities fleeing before them all the time.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you the answer that I thought you were going to say.
Great.
So I wasn't leading you, but as I asked the question, I'm like,
you were
I
hoping
know
I was smart and I would come with your answer.
Yeah. Well, because you've told me this before,
okay.
and you and I have done some coaching together with some clients in the property management space. And, one of the things that for myself in running and in business that I need to work on first is I know I have all these little problems in business. I know I need to look at becoming more efficient in some of my operations. I know I need to become more profitable in some of the areas. I know, like, I, as a client or as a coach, I know these are a lot of the hot topics. And a lot of times people get distracted by the tool, the shiny new thing that if I could just have these magic beans, my business would be better. And so they go buy those magic beans, and guess what? It's the same as it was. And what I've learned, and I know you have the same thing or same thought, and this is what I thought you were going to say is before you start working on the business and on the tools and on the execution, you need to first start working on the mindset. And I know this is a little ooey wooey, gooey,
Fluff.
touchy feely fluff,
One of my guys
but
calls it the fluff.
yeah, I think a lot of times when people come to me and talk about their business being broken, and I try to say this as nicely as I can, it's not the business that's broken, it's the business owner that's broken. And we fix the business owner, we get them thinking with the right mentality, the right mindset, and we get them to focus on what the business actually means to them and their personal life. Like, we all go through struggles as entrepreneurs. Why do we have the business? Why do we go through those struggles? Well, the reason we have business is so that it provides a lifestyle that we want, and we can define what that looks like. But we need to tie those two things together. We need to tie what does the business actually do to serve you and the lifestyle you want to live. And then once we figure that connection out, we figure out what do we need to do with our mindset and who do we need to become to actually start to execute on some of the operational and financial metrics.
Yeah, and I have a slightly different take on it. I don't think the purpose of my business is to provide a lifestyle for me. I think the purpose of my business is to act as a vehicle for my own personal transformational journey. And if I'm not making significant progress on my own personal transformational journey, I am not happy. I am not fulfilled. Doesn't matter how much money I have. I marvel at these guys that are making 10 times more money than I am, that are absolutely on fire and driven every single day. Because money at the end of the day and lifestyle, once we attain it, we realize it's pretty hollow. And unless we're doing something that connects with our purpose, adding value, leveraging our gifts and talents in the service of others, and that's what the vehicle business does for me. And I can't make progress along that journey without the right coach to help me with my mindset. Mindset is everything to me. Tools are the easy part. Mindset is everything. Alex Hormozy once said, he was in a conference or a speaking engagement, a keynote speaker at the end of it said, how much would you pay to stop making less than $1 million a year? In other words, everybody listening to me has the capability of making $1 million a year. Your cost of not making $1 million a year is the difference between your current income and $1 million. How much would you pay to eliminate that gap? Just put a different context to it. Like, if my gap is if I'm making $500,000 a year and it's costing me $500,000 a year, my mindset issues are costing me $500,000 a year. How much should I be willing to invest to overcome those? And the answer suddenly comes into greater focus. There's people that can help me break through my mindset issues. And that's everything. That's foundational.
Yep. Okay. You added some extra stuff there. I want to go back a little bit, and I like everything that you said, all the stuff that you said in there about the business being a transformational vehicle for your life and all of that. That's what I want to say when I say lifestyle, because
Okay.
to me, it's not about the
Not the money.
material goods. It's about the freedom, the
Yeah.
opportunity I provide for other people. So we need to come up with a better word for that. But we're saying the same thing. It's not about the stuff you can amass. It's about
It's
the
freedom.
person you become
Yeah.
along the way. Yeah.
It's achieving of the level of freedom that's required, and then applying that freedom to continued value creation for other people, and that's what brings joy in life, at least in my experience.
Okay, so we have a lot of people that listen to this that are, some of them are just the solo entrepreneurs. Some of them have doors that are 1,000 doors, 5,000 doors that they manage. And I think hiring a coach or having somebody that can be even just a little further ahead of you of where you are is beneficial for everybody. So, I can imagine somebody listening to this and saying, "Well, cool story, bro, but like how do I go about finding somebody?" And I know obviously you can reach out to me, but that's the commercial part. I want to skip that. So, like after I find a coach, what would you look for in a good coach? You said you have multiple and you've had them for years. I know we've talked. You've
Yeah.
had coaches for years. What do you look for in a coach to hire somebody to help you out?
Well, here's something else. There are free coaches out there. They're called mentors, and I failed to seek out mentors for most of my adult life because I didn't feel worthy, and that's a whole different topic. Like I was so transactionally minded, and I felt so undeserving of other people's help, probably because I wasn't willing to give freely of myself, right? That's where that came from. That I missed out for years and years of free coaching from mentors. And so there's a whole category of coaching that can come from mentors that their biggest payoff in many cases is that they can see the ideas they give you manifest in creating things. I mean, I feel like we're creatures of creation, and if you give a really smart person that wants to help people the opportunity through you to manifest additional creation, that can be fulfilling to that person in and of itself. So you can, I once shared with my son. I said, you know what, if you wanted to find business mentors, or you wanted to find free help that would be invaluable to advancing whatever it is you're working on, hang around the places that those people hang around and boldly and fearlessly start introducing yourself to people and get a little pitch down about how this is who you are, this is where you're at, and this is what I'm looking for. Once we get really clear, the universe has this powerful force to direct into our lives the things that we get really clear about. I mean, I know it's happened to you in your life, Tony. I experienced it so many times. I get really clear exactly what I'm looking for, whether it's a person or a tool or an opportunity. And then suddenly, it's almost like my eyes are open to the things that were around me already that I wasn't connecting the dots on, or new things start coming in my way that it's like, that's part of it right there. Okay, I see it now. And then you can act and you can attract that into your life. So I feel like start with the mindset, feel worthy, feel deserving, be willing to give back after you receive from someone, right? And then that releases that feeling of guilt or unworthiness. And then you'll be surprised how many mentors and coaches there are all around you.
Hmm. Yeah, I want to touch on something that you said that just really hit me good. It was a really impactful. And you said that you had to become worthy of the person who was mentoring or was being mentored. And one of the things that made me think, or that you made me think, was that if I felt like I had one secret and that's all I had, I would be afraid to share that secret, because if everybody else knew that secret, then I I don't have any advantage anymore. And then you start hanging around people that are outperforming you, and you find out they're sharing everything. Like if they know something that is working, now they're not sharing it with everybody, but they're sharing it with their inner circle or their group or the people that they feel are worthy to be mentored or to get that information. And so you start hanging around people that are performing, and it almost becomes this contest of how can I outgive the other person. And when you start acting like that with the people that you're hanging around, you realize that the only value that you have with that secret is sharing it with others and helping others be better. And so I think a lot of times it's I don't know exactly, but there's an old I saw it when I was a kid. Some monkey stuck his hand in a jar to get some a walnut or something out of the jar, and because it was the only one, he wouldn't let go. But if he would have just let go, there was a whole tree growing, right around the corner where he could have had as many as he wanted. And so it just made me think, opening up that mindset and being willing to give back, even if it's not directly to that mentor or to that coach, but be willing to lift others up. You'll find out that as we lift others up, there's other people lifting us up, and the whole chain just continues.
Some of the most important things in business have a flow to them. Money has a flow, knowledge has a flow, energy has a flow. These things need to flow through us, and as they flow through us, we get them in greater abundance. I'd like to connect this idea to there's another way that we can connect this back to training. There was a book I read once early on when I was like super obsessed about getting back into running, and it talked about practicing running. And I thought, practicing running? I know running is training, and I'm doing all these base junk miles, but it talked about practicing running like a juggler practices juggling. And I thought, well, that's weird. And the idea or the concept was that the more we run, if we're deliberate about our running and we're focused about our running and every footstep matters, then we're making the little micro adjustments and micro changes that make us a more efficient runner. One of the goals in running is to move our body the greatest distance with the least effort to get super efficient. And we can train our muscles to get more efficient. You and I, when we run, Tony, and we see somebody else running, we can pick out how much running they've done. You can do that when you've run enough. You can see, okay, they have an efficient stride. There, you can just look at them for 3 seconds. That's a runner. So what does that have to do with what we're talking about right now? I think in a way this relates to the idea of being willing to give, being willing to share information, being willing to share knowledge as it flows through us, as we articulate our ideas, as we contribute to others. It's like we're practicing learning and we're practicing leveling up because we're also sharing it back with other people. A practical application of this for free may be go find 2 or 3 Facebook groups that have to do with your industry and just start giving as much as you can on those groups and see what happens.
Yeah. So we've convinced some people that are listening to us today that hiring a coach is going to elevate them personally, professionally, mentally. It's going to help them out. So what are the things in business? What are some of the areas, categories that you have coaches for that you've seen some benefit from having them?
For me, the biggest benefits, the biggest impacts from coaching have come with my thinking, my mindset, and my thinking. I have a coach right now that I meet with every Friday, and all we're talking about is the old school Earl Nightingale, Dale Carnegie, like positivity and vibration and energy. The fact that our conscious mind is what we can control, but our subconscious mind is what produces all of our outputs. And so we have to make sure that we're putting positive things into our subconscious all the time. Just really foundational things to complement the books that I'm reading. I'm reading a book called Head Trash that's so complementary with my coaching right now, and it's having a powerful multiplying effect. So about guarding carefully and being aware of the negative thoughts that we entertain and intentionally intercepting those and changing them. So to answer your question, the most impactful coaching I have are the things that move me into a state of higher positivity, creativity, and energy. I feel like part of my one of the most key ingredients of success for me, Tony, I don't know about you, is if I can just be the closest I can to my best each day with the right mindset, the right positivity, the right energy, then I'm on the path that I need to be. And all the success in business will follow because I'm working on myself. What about you?
Yeah, I think, when we're going through that, obviously I agree with working on mindset and working on just becoming your better self every day. But I think there's also a practical application to business coaching in the business side, right? We've talked a lot about the business isn't broken, the business owner is broken. And once we start working on that, we can identify some of the things in the business that we now have the ability to fix because we're open to it. We have the right mindset. So some of those things in business is the way that you handle operations, the way that you handle hiring, the way that you handle team building, the way that you handle profitability, all of those things, growth, sales and business development. Each one of those areas is an area that you can get coaching on. And, there are people who will specialize in just certain aspects of that. And there are people who will work with you to implement each one of those categories to work collectively to deliver better results. And, there's really no right or wrong in that. It's just what do you think, where do you align with your coach, and where do you think that you need the most help? And a lot of times areas start to bleed from one area into the next. And so you might think you need to work on one area, but you get that fixed and you realize that's creating opportunities for improvement somewhere else. And so you just now start working on those.
If you run the same workouts every week, is that an optimal training strategy?
No, as a matter of fact, I love that you asked that question. One of the things that I talk about a lot when something goes wrong, whether it's in business or in running, I say, well, that's good training, because if I'm training to go out and run a 200-mile race, and like you said, that's 3 or 4 days of being out there in the elements, under different conditions, different terrain. If I don't experience something until the day that it's really important, that race day, if I haven't experienced it, I don't know if I have the mental grit to get through it, or if I have the experience to get through it, or I have the tools or technology to get through it. And so when I'm out on a run and it starts to rain for 2 hours, I'm like, this is great training. And I've conditioned myself now when something comes up that is out of my normal routine, that gives me a new obstacle to overcome. I've trained myself to look at that as, well, this is good training. So if I have a stomach ache and I don't want to go, or I have a headache, I'm like, well, it's good training. I'm probably going to have to go through having stomach issues somewhere on the trail. Same thing with if it's raining, or if it's hot, or if it's cold. Like, these are opportunities to go through something where you tell yourself, well, this is good training. Now I've learned how to do that. When it comes up, when it really matters, I won't have to go through that. And you can do the same thing with business. An owner calls and is upset, doesn't think you represented them well, even though you did what was in their best interest. Or a tenant calls and they didn't get approved and they're yelling at you, and they're upset, or at you or one of your staff members. It's good training. Like, learn how to handle that so that it no longer is an issue for you.
Absolutely. When you're talking about, reflecting on your just recent comment about the different types of coaching, like I said, mindset coaching, and you're talking about there's financial coaches and there's operational coaches, and there's like these, similar to running, introduce different varied diverse training resources, like just like mixing up your training and being grateful for the diversity in training that actually make you not only physically stronger but mentally stronger. It's well known in the running world that if you run the same runs every day and the same workout every Tuesday and Saturday, you are absolutely limiting your growth. You have to mix things up to achieve your best. And so I think there's a correlation here with also different coaches, different disciplines, different perspectives. We need that variety and that difference.
Yeah. All right. Well, how do we want to wrap this up? I think we've kind of
we could go way deeper, but we should wrap
yeah
it up. Yeah,
yeah
bite size.
yeah. I think obviously you all know that I believe heavily in coaching. So does Mark. We both have had coaches for years, and I sold my business in property management after 24 years, and that's all I do now is coaching. So you know that I believe in it, or I would be doing something else. We've talked in previous episodes about in sales, if you don't believe in something, you just don't have that same power or impact, and your ability to continue to do that without burning out, it's just not there. And so you know that I believe in it. And if I were going to give somebody some advice on how to get started with a coach, I would talk to multiple coaches. I would see who you click with, right? Because as business owners, part of working with a coach is having somebody besides yourself to be accountable to. And, that's one of the things I love about in training season, when I have somebody else that's going to meet me at the trailhead. I know that, if we're going to do a long run and I got to get up and leave the house by 4:30 in the morning, I know if it's just me, it's so easy to just turn off that alarm and say, I'll do it at 5 or 6 or 7.
That accountability is huge.
Yeah. So I would look at, who do I click with, where I think that we could have a good relationship and I feel comfortable being open, honest, transparent, and accountable to this person. And for some people, I might be the right one. For some people, you're going to be the right one. For some people, it might be somebody else. But I think that piece, if I'm looking at interviewing a coaching relationship and seeing if I'm a good fit, that has to be number one, because you can go through and talk about all these things that are going to make you better, whether it's running or coaching. If my coach Mike would have, in the running world, if he would have told me all of these things I need to do, work on my heart rate, balancing my electrolytes, we could add great conversations, great Zoom meetings, whatever. And then when I go hit the hills, I do whatever I want. Like, there's no accountability, so you're not going to get the benefit out of that coaching relationship that you want.
Yeah, it has to be that accountability. Stand on the scale in front of somebody else. Just get intentional about, feel worthy of the help, and decide that it's worth investing in, and don't think about the cost as much as you think about the opportunities foregone if you don't get that level of help. Believe in yourself. Find the people that will elevate your training to a much higher plane, and I think that's the most foundational, fundamental advice we could give in this topic.
Yep. All right. Well, like we say when I'm working an aid station in a race, it's good to see you. Now get out of here.
Let's get out of here. Go run the next segment. We'll see you in 10 miles.
Yep. All right. See you guys.
All right. See you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Property Management Success Podcast. We'll be back with another value-packed episode to help you level up your property management game. If you've got something valuable out of today's episode, please share it with a friend or colleague, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so you never miss out on future insights and strategies and tactics. Until next time, here's to your success.